I mean, here you are running these billion-dollar companies,
Right.
and it comes down to the very simple thing of building relationships.
Well, it's one of the first things I ask people when they are either coming to work for us or after they've been working for us a while, and I get time to spend talking with them, and I say, what makes you happy? And I find that, especially with young people, it's not an easy question to answer. It does, it takes some, sort of know thyself first.
Yep.
And a lot of people haven't spent nearly enough time on that topic, right?
Yeah.
In terms of really understanding. I mean, they might think they know, well, I'd like to have more money. I'd like to be, I'd like to have a successful career. I'd like to, I would like to have a nicer home. But none of those are really what make people happy, right? No. It's about meaningful relationships with their spouse. It's about, continuing to have an ongoing, relationship with their children from the beginning till as long as they'll have them. Yeah. And it's about finding some meaning in what they do. And, I think if you can connect with people on that basis and translate what you're trying to do as a company into enabling them to connect the company mission with their personal perspective of, not just what makes you satisfied, but, when was the last time you had the window down, radio up, wind in your hair, 60 miles an hour, singing along at the top of your lungs, joyously happy? Yeah. Now think about, why did that happen? What was it at that moment in time in your business day and your personal life that got you there? Yeah. Chase that. And that will lead to very good things. But I've found that, as a business leader, you can actually help people with that, and then helping them connect it with your company.
So you're talking about purpose-driven life as a businessman.
Oh yeah.
We're going to talk more about this later, but it's so important because you're drilled all the time. Make money, make money, make money. Do whatever you have to make money. Sell, sell, sell.
Right.
And what you're hearing here, it's not about making money. It's not about sell, sell, sell. It's about quality of your life, right. of being curious, of building trust.
Yes.
Trust is a great word, isn't it? Trust.
Yeah.
Of trust of all the people that we were treating everybody with respect. Right. And I think that's defines, since I've been talking to you before we started filming here, that's defined you from the time you came out of Clemson University.
That's right. I mean, it was, and I like to think it's, you get help along the way. I think, our parents are obviously the start of that. Yep. And, giving you a perspective on the world and, sort of the golden rule type of things, and treat others as you'd like to be treated. It's very, very simple, but it's extremely powerful, and it still holds true in every phase of life.
I'm going to give you something that I say a lot and I believe in. The mission of a quarterback is to make my teammates better. Mm-hmm. You okay with that?
Yeah.
The mission of a business leader, whether you have one employee or your customer, right. is to help that person, to make them better.
Yes. Right.
Make the experience better. The mission of business is to help people and to solve mm-hmm. problems. And people say to me, no, the mission is to make money. Yeah. I think it's a byproduct.
Yes. It might be how you keep score.
Yeah, you keep score,
but it's not why you play the game.
Because
right.
to me, I'm going to take it one step and you can take. If your mission is to help people and do the right thing and really care about your customer, and care about your employee or associate, you got to that can last. Yes. If your mission going there is, I want to be a billionaire, a millionaire, I want to be like those guys on Wall Street, and I just want to make a lot of money, I believe you more likely compromise your principles. What say you?
Yeah, you don't have any. If that's the only guiding mission, if that's your reason for being, then what would you not do to get there? Yeah. Right. So there's just not a good framework in that environment to guide good behavior. And I do think that we see good people succumb to temptation. I think there's lots of mistakes made along the way. But if you don't have a way to lead yourself back and to help lead your people back, because your people will make mistakes,
sure.
critical mistakes. Yeah. They won't be their best on certain days. But if the only way to get them back to being their best is the pursuit of wealth, yeah, that's just a hollow goal. And that never, I think if you talk to most people, that have achieved that level of success, almost none of them got there because that was their mission.
No.
They had a mission
Yeah.
that was worth pursuing, that motivated people, that attracted tremendous, numbers of talented, hardworking folks to their cause, and to do it along with them, because nobody does much by themselves.
No.
And to do that, they had to have an overarching mission that was consistent with people's values. And if they pursued that, well, along the way they may have become a billionaire. But
here you and I have spent our life in business. Me a few more years than you. But in many circles of America, if you're successful in business and made money, you're a capitalist pig.
Right.
Something's evil about you, that it's kind of wrong. And you wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal, an op-ed about that, and I think it's a pretty interesting story. Yeah. And kind of tell us the story of how you came to write that.
Fran, it's like I said, I have kids. My son's 6 and my daughter's 8, so I watch more cartoons than any adult probably should. But it really started to bother me probably a couple years ago when I noticed that compared to, I grew up, we had a 21-inch, Magnavox in the living room, and that was about as good as it got, and 3 channels. So we didn't have a lot of cartoons to watch, but when we did, there was a villain, right? A real villain that was doing bad stuff. And we had, back then, of course, it was the height of the Cold War, so we had the USSR. I mean, we had real evil to worry about. Yeah. And I noticed that my kids weren't getting any of that. The bad guy in nearly every storyline that they watched or read about in their school books and their, on TV was, the businessman was the boogeyman. Yeah. And they were hearing this over and over. So, as president of a company, an owner of companies, whose main work in life is building businesses, this was a pretty big wake-up call, because you're like, all of a sudden you wake up and you're the bad guy. And you're the bad guy that your children are hearing about every day in many forums. And, that's what sort of led part of my discussion on that. And it was like, so I started thinking about what leads to that. Yeah. Why would someone conclude that suddenly, the way I grew up was, capitalism was one of the reasons we were so successful as a company. I mean, our economic system, we outcompeted the Russians. The other systems couldn't do what we could do. And we created more wealth for more people than any country in the history of the world.
And we invited competition.
Yes. And
we didn't have a monopoly on anything. No.
And it was achieved through, it wasn't achieved through, hoarding or limiting opportunity, right? And so I talk to people, and I talk a little bit about this in the article, that, the assault on, I think, business and the free enterprise system rests from a perspective that everything's a zero-sum game. That, and I have my pie people theory on life, which is, you're a wedge person or you're a pie person. People say, well, what do you mean? I say, well, there's this growing perspective that any growth in someone's wealth or success or a company's success, it could be a personal or a company thing, but, if your slice of the pie got bigger, your wedge grew, then you took it from someone else. You had to exploit someone, either your employees or the environment or another country, whatever the case may be. And that perspective, so if that is your starting point, well, then you can quickly see how people could move from there to thinking, well, the businessman is the evil guy, because he's the one leading the charge to, drive a bigger wedge, take more. Yeah. The flaw in that whole perspective is, the rest of us look at that and go, okay, we got a pie that's this big. Well, we want to have more people, more employees with more income and growing opportunities. Just make the pie bigger. Yeah. With hard work, innovation, creativity, pursuit of worthy objectives. Yeah. It's just that simple. It's not complicated. No. It's looking at that going, we found that in talking to employees in particular, and peers and coworkers and other leaders, I mean, if you can't imbue that perspective, well then, how are you, and you are having success as a company, how are employees to feel about their own work? I mean, if they're being successful and part of a successful company and you're growing, you're thriving, I mean, are they to believe that that's only because we exploited something or that we took from others? And so it's so fundamental in terms of, a basic perspective on life, but certainly in business and commerce and our economy, that it's about creating net new value. It's not about rent-seeking activity where I'm just trying to either through lobbying for a certain regulation or a certain sort of favor in our system of government, or limiting competition. I want to exclude others so I don't have to deal with competition, so I can just take more. Well, those don't work. That doesn't work as a system, doesn't work as a framework of government, it doesn't work in your personal life. So I think
and don't you feel we cannot legislate or manipulate success?
No.
We hear now the rich, we got to take from the rich and give to the poor.
Right.
We got to.
Which starts with the premise that there's only that much.
Yeah, there's only that much. So there's this gap here. Let's take from here and put down here. And I tend to think the greatness of America is creating the bigger pie, but also creating opportunity for all people, right?
Right.
Whether you told me you didn't come up entitled.
No.
I didn't come up entitled.
No.
I came up with a very modest background. I lived in 180 Nantahala Avenue, Athens, Georgia. Wasn't a member of the country club.
No.
I wasn't in the chosen group.
No.
But in America, it didn't matter.
Right.
And what we want to do at Forefront here, which we've done and outflank everybody, is create opportunity, and yet there's so many people trying to stifle that.
Right. Well, and I think at so mane points in young people's lives now, they're being told it's not about that opportunity. It's about you being given something, or that you have to elect a form of government that takes from others to give to you because some reason you're not able to go get it. Where I was raised with nothing, and I was fortunately the first person in my family on either side everywhere to ever go to college. I mean, that's the gift I got from my parents, amongst good upbringing. But that was so fundamental in terms of how we viewed everything. Was I got nothing, but I'm going to make something along the way, and I live in a country that allows us and supports us, and really the best system ever to encourage that. But I do think we're at I don't think, I'm not a doomsayer. I'm an optimist, and I still think there is greatness in front of us as a country and as an economy. All this stuff where China's going to dominate the world, and there's nothing close to what we got here.